The race for mayor of Boston is down to its last 2 weeks before the preliminary election on September 14th. The latest indicators show tight competition, with many voters still undecided. Joining us for another in our series of pre-election segments is one of the candidates who formerly served as the city's chief of economic development. We'd like to welcome John Barros. Thank you very much for being with us, John.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
John, I want to start with the commercial that you've recently put on the air and online about the city as a table, maybe a feast of growth and opportunity. But the message at the end of it is, if we work together. What were you thinking of with that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, Boston is a very diverse city, and that in many ways can be depicted at, a potluck dinner that we would have. It's something that I do often with my family, is we bring a lot of people together and bring different dishes and different voices, different opinions, different positions on things. But I think we can all have a seat at the table. It's something I've been doing for a very long time as executive director of Dutchess Neighborhood Initiative. A lot of the work that I did in the community was collaborative work, bringing different stakeholders around the table. It was about making sure we had diversity, different ethnicities around the table, different generations. As a youth organizer, it was important that we have youth voices. As someone who ran for the board of the Dutchess Neighborhood Initiative at the age of 17, I learned that very early, that having all voices at the table really matters. And as mayor, I try to do the same thing.
I want to ask you about the schools, because part of your background, I believe, is you were on the school committee for a while. Uh, there's a lot of dissatisfaction out there, especially with the upper grades. And now there's worries about what happened during the pandemic. What's in your plan to address things like that?
Well, yeah, no, it's important that as we go back to schools that we're safe and we're clear about the protocols. The schools, I've heard the school department talk about the fact that they're going to mandate vaccinations, masks, social distancing, and regular testing. And that's what we need to do. And we need to make sure that the parents know and that we're translating information and that we're out there and people feel comfortable. Beyond that, in my first 100 days, I will focus first on early childhood development. And I will fund up 3-year-old seats for every 3-year-old child in the city of Boston, and 4-year-old seats, to make sure that we invest in pre-K, universal pre-K, quality universal pre-K. I'll also launch a pilot guaranteed minimum income program to pay for or create additional funding to pay our early childhood developers, those who are taking care of our children, so that we can create more quality seats at the early childhood phase, from birth to 2, before they go to school. It's critical that we have a robust ecosystem that's developing our children, but it's also allowing for our parents and for the primary caregivers to go to work. Too many of our women, in fact, are home and out of the labor force because of it. And we know that kind of investment can pay dividends by the time the child is in the teenage years. Because for every dollar we spend in the early years, we save 17 on the back end on remedial work and supplemental work. So it's a worthwhile investment. But we also know that we need to improve our schools, which is why I launched a $4 billion plan to improve Boston public schools. Every neighborhood deserves a 21st century quality school, one with a library, with an innovation lab, with quality air system, so that we don't have to worry about the HVAC system in the school. Our schools are too old, and our children deserve better facilities. But every neighborhood deserves a better facility, so that you can actually pick your neighborhood school. There's no reason why you should wonder about the school across the city. I want to create higher demand for neighborhood schools by investing in every neighborhood. And then we've got a robust ecosystem in our jobs and workforce space. So I've also said that we should support Madison Park by creating an independent board over the school and an independent budget, to make sure that the schools are that Madison Park is connected to our jobs, connected to our economy, and the students are getting the best attention they can and the best programming they can in the jobs pathway to get to better careers.
Why that greater independence? What can it do that hasn't been done already?
Well, we've learned a lot from the other Votech schools in Massachusetts, and all of them are modeled that way. The state regulation that guides or that regulates the Votech schools, the programs, it's called Chapter 74. And when you have a Chapter 74 program, you're supposed to have what's called a PAB, a Program Advisory Board, over each program. And so the schools that have strong program advisory boards do better, and the students have more opportunities. And in Boston, with such a rich business community, with so many different innovative companies, we can create really strong boards over each program and then create a strong school board to give them immediate support on the kinds of programs that they want to help bring to the school, help strengthen, or help fund up. It'll allow the school leadership to have closer funding partners, and it'll allow the students to be closer to jobs with more internships, apprenticeships, and the like. We also need to build better relationships with our city colleges. That's why I announced a city college system that allows students in all high schools to take college courses by dual enrollment. As mayor, I'll push to make sure that at least 40% of our high school students have an experience in college and are taking some kind of college course before they graduate.
I want to ask you about the resident jobs policy. These are jobs on major construction projects. During the administration under Marty Walsh, the goals were increased, for residents and people of color and women. But at the same time, as far as the actual results, it looked as if it was hard to make much headway. I mean, is it you don't have the workers who are skilled enough? You don't have a database to show that they exist, or is it just that the contractors are playing hardball and the city just doesn't have much to do about that?
Well, so yeah, you're right. I helped to lead the conversation, working with advocates on the ground to increase the jobs goals, the Boston Residents Jobs Policy goals. On the three goals we have, we were exceeding one of them, which was the workers of color, consistently exceeding the goals for workers of color. We recognized that the Boston demographics had changed and we're a more diverse city, so we wanted to increase that goal and make it more of a stretch goal, so that we can continue to influence the trades. As we were increasing the workers of color, we decided that we would also increase. So we took it from 25 to 40%, because we were consistently exceeding the 25% workers of color, and we were in the 30s. So we wanted to make it a stretch goal to get into the 40s. So we weren't looking for goals we can necessarily hit. We were looking for goals that would help us continue to create change in the labor force, which is why we went to 40. And then for women, which was the goal actually we had before, was 10, but we were only at 6%. But the mayor wanted to send a message that the trades need to do better, and that labor force needs to do better in construction for women. So we bumped that up to 12%. And then in order to make a value statement on the residential, we brought it up to 51%, so that our residents are a majority of the workforce on our construction, as opposed to 50. But that kind of adjustment really allowed us to focus on workers of color. We were hitting that goal, and we think with a stretch goal, we can help make the labor force more diverse.
I want to ask you about housing, and I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of the pressures for gentrification right now, especially along the Fairmount corridor or maybe East Boston. Most candidates are not in favor of rent control. I understand you're not in favor of it. So if not rent control, what's the best way to protect people at risk of displacement?
Yeah, the best way to protect people from risk of displacement is to have a deed restricted rented unit. It's a different form of rent control. When you have a deed restricted unit, you have rent stabilization, rent control. Your rent's not going to change on you. And so that's the way to do it. We need to build more of those. And then as Chief of Economic Development, I helped to work with Mayor Walsh to put in a rent stabilization legislation at the state. It didn't pass, but as mayor, I would still want to do that, where we shouldn't see huge rent increases, and we should be protecting our most vulnerable population, particularly our elders. After a certain amount of time in a home, they should have, really slight rent increases. And then the general population shouldn't see dramatic rent increases as well. So rent stabilization, I think, is the way to go to protect those who are in existing rental units or in situations where their rent can increase. But I think the real way to do this is to build more of deed-restricted affordable units. It's something that I did as executive director of the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative, and that means that you're building the home, and as you build it, you're building it to be affordable. It's the subsidies you use allows you to do it, and so that rent is always going to be affordable. It does not move. The housing cost for the homeowner will be an affordable housing cost that we need to do at the level of affordability for each neighborhood. The AMI is too high, and I think you know this. And we need to make sure when we're doing affordable homes that we're building it affordable for the people who live in that neighborhood. And so we need to use a neighborhood median income number to make sure that it is affordable for those families.
I want to ask you about the police department because you got two different things coming at you. One is that we still have too much violent crime, but at the same time, we have too many things done by police that maybe should be done better by somebody else. So how do you come out on those two?
Yeah, I've publicly asked for a public agency that would join the three emergency agencies on 911. So right now, when you call 911, you either get the dispatcher will send out a police, an EMS professional, or somebody in the fire department. I've called for, and as mayor, I would create a new agency, a new emergency agency that would have trained professionals that would send out someone who is trained in mental health, or someone who might be trained on domestic violence, or someone who might be trained on substance abuse. I was taking a walk down the street the other day in Roxbury on Girard Street with a reporter actually. And someone called out and said, John. Well, they didn't call my name. They said, "Hi, I need help. Please call 911." When I walked up to them, they said that they were overdosing. And I said, "Well, I have Narcan in the car. I'll get it quickly." He said, "No, somebody just applied Narcan. I'm fine. I need a detox bed." Well, 911 is not the best call for a detox bed, but it's the only call we have. So I called 911. We need a better system that when somebody needs a detox bed, we're calling an emergency professional that's showing up. We also need a better system when a child is having an argument with their parent, that it's not police that's showing up, but it's a social worker. We need a better system of someone who is showing up for our schools. We need trained professionals who are showing up for calls that should not be police, and that we don't have someone professionally trained to answer right now. The city of Boston has to do a better job of making sure that the police officers and those who are our first responders aren't answering these kinds of calls. Trained professionals should be answering them.
Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate being on the show.
That was John Barros, candidate for mayor of Boston. We'll have more news in just a moment.